I just want to, there are a couple of points I want to take off from what Manish said to begin with. That, basically he said that it's too early to talk about social media being a tool of accountability. It's more of a tool of it's an interface here. So I just want to get a quick reaction from everybody, starting with you, Jay, since you said you have these, the small WhatsApp groups in different little parts of your constituency. Can everybody, as I said to begin with you, give me examples of where, let's say, the communication between you and your constituency has changed. Let's say 5 years ago, somebody wouldn't have asked you this question. Now suddenly they did. And then what did you do? Did you just say that, listen, I'm sorry, but the Jal board doesn't report to me. By the way, that's something you should talk to your MLA about. So what did you actually do?
So I think
give me real life examples in this case.
I partly agree with Manish when he says that, first of all, the numbers of people in most constituencies who are on WhatsApp is still, in thousands, not in lakhs.
Yeah.
And also the systems are not yet there, but it does provide an interface, like he said.
And you can do an @JayPanda Twitter and just say this is not
Right.
working. So.
Well, most people in rural constituencies still don't have access to Twitter.
Okay.
But let me explain what happens. So what happens is, behind the shield of online persona, people get bolder. And you can see they ask very blunt questions, which they would hesitate to in person or in any other medium. Secondly, because it is multimedia, if for example a minister goes and inaugurates something and says, I've inaugurated a lift irrigation point, you'll see on a WhatsApp group, immediately within the next few hours, photographs of defunct lift irrigation points which were inaugurated 5 years ago or 10 years ago, not functioning.
And this is happening to you regularly?
This is happening regularly.
Okay.
So this kind of accountability is already beginning to happen. Now, in any case, I spend about 15 days a month in the field. So I'm a little bit better equipped because I'm in the ground already, and I've been doing this for 5 years. So when people come back to me, I face the same problems as any MP, where the expectations are very high and they expect you to do every elected representative's work, from corporator all the way up to Prime Minister. So it's very hard to say, look, this is not my job. When 500,000 people have...
You could say, elect me to the Prime Minister's job and then I'll do it. You could.
Well, look, when more than 500,000 people have voted for you, they have a right to demand whatever.
Sure.
So getting into the semantics of the issue is probably not advisable in the heat of the moment.
Okay.
And being more receptive and listening to their problem and demonstrating that you are committed to addressing their problem is more important right there and then. And discussing the semantics of, look, this is what I can do and this is what I am doing, is probably done when cooler heads are prevailing.
But would you agree with what Manish said, that this is as yet not a tool of accountability? It's just a better interface right now.
No. I think it is not yet a well-structured tool of accountability. So I partially agree with Manish. But it is clearly, what is happening is, some of these, you can call them citizen journalists or constituents who have time on their hands with a phone camera, who are going and holding up accountability, like I said, in groups. They point out something that's defunct. They point out something that's not working. Or they point out, it's very difficult nowadays for the police to do favoritism in, for example, a dowry case in some remote village. Because earlier it was possible. Local grandees would get together and try to organize a compromise or to suppress the issue not becoming a police case. Not possible anymore, because somebody is going to put it on a WhatsApp group which will come out in the regional paper or a national paper soon. So it is forcing authorities grudgingly and kicking and screaming, they are being forced to be more accountable. Nowhere near perfect, nowhere near as structured as it should be, but it is having an impact.
Meenakshi, your thoughts on that?
I think in my case, I would say again, structuring is an issue. And that's what I pointed out. That I came up with this bright idea of having an app, connect with your MP, Raksha, women safety app, so on and so forth, because I wanted my constituency to do well, and I thought it had the right escape velocity. So I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
I'll get a tweet marked to me saying a particular library in a particular locality is getting shifted out and is getting closed. Kindly act on it. So I immediately put that tweet, I instruct the office, write a letter, find out. Now, I don't get to know who runs that under which ministry or which department it comes, all that job is mine to discover,
Yeah, to figure out
all that out. And I only get Rajendra Nagar, Delhi Public Library getting closed. So you have to figure out who runs it, who has to manage it, why it is closing, how it is to be done. But I did it. That got sorted. I was the one who was promoting people that please send me the areas where the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan is going on and where the garbage is not getting picked up. So you send me the pictures, I'll ensure it gets picked up. Now I very boldly made that statement, but then I am not the one who's supposed to pick it up. There is a system which does it. And that system is not responsive enough with the speed and alacrity as I may want it to happen. That's where the gaps are, and that's exactly what I pointed out. I get connected from my electorate through internet and in the form of emails, SMSs, messages, and I'm constantly at it. Now, interestingly, nobody understands the burden of running that kind of office where your MP is accessible, your office needs to answer it, answerability, which you don't directly control.
So
For
basically,
example,
you're saying that you've got a digitally empowered electorate. Now you need digitally empowered MPs who can actually get people to work.
No. MP is very, very empowered. Yeah. It's the bureaucracy.
Yeah, which is not responding to you guys.
And which is not responding. So it is repeatedly if garbage needs to be picked up, it's not my job. If a particular road needs repair, I can only tell people. I mean, MP led funds, I ensure that it gets out in the first go, but it has to be made on the ground. That is a bureaucrat's job, which is not happening. So what I'm trying to emphasize is there's a system under which a person like me would want responses to happen, and those responses are dependent on people who are probably still coping up with the systems and have not learned to cope up, whether voluntarily or involuntarily or just sheer inertia. Either way, that responsiveness needs to get on board. And for me, I was the first one to tweet that and say, for me, internet is the new God, because it empowers everyone if you use it right. But the wisdom lies with you how you use it. And if that wisdom's not going to come to Delhi government and other who need to answer, then what can a poor MP do?
Manish, your thoughts on that, since you raised this issue about the fact that unless you bring in a right to recall, perhaps it won't be an issue. It cannot be a tool of accountability. To what extent do you share what Meenakshi is saying, that listen, that we are getting to know what the problems people are facing, but frankly, we aren't in a position to do much about it because, the work has to be done by some municipality or something like that?
Well, obviously, email cannot pick up garbage. Garbage has to be physically picked up. So therefore, there is a dichotomy out there, which needs to be addressed. You see, basically, the problem is you have a multiplicity of authorities. Authorities which have different responsibilities, different jurisdictions. There is an impatient citizen who obviously feels that his issues should get redressed. He's not concerned as to whether A is addressing them or B is addressing them, or to whose remit that it falls. So these are all real issues which, as you go along, you will have to sort out. Then also is the question...
How will those get sorted out, by the way?
Well, first of all, you'll have to, build capacity in the back offices of public representatives. If, let us suppose, you are a corporator who has a constituency of 100,000 people, and those 100,000 people, or a bulk of them, happen to be online, with the kind of capacity which is available or the kind of resources which are available with him, I'm afraid he will never be able to keep up. Forget a member of parliament, who has X million number of constituents who are spread all across a geographical area. So therefore, the capacity building has to go along. So when you're going to talk about a digital India, or you're talking about a digital Bharat, where is the capacity within government to be able to really absorb, assimilate, and respond to it? So what you are going to see over a period of time is as the instruments of information dissemination proliferate, the load on the governance systems is almost going to become an overload. So till the time you do not re-engineer governance processes, there is no way that this gap between expectation and delivery will ever be fulfilled.
That sounds, I mean, like something most governments would say. Would you agree with that, Pawan? That you know, as you said, I mean, what Manish is saying is becoming an overload, and you don't have the capacity to deal with it. So it's actually a lot of information. It's a lot of very angry people, and it's now people who say, "Listen, I told this guy earlier on. You know, you could say you never let me know. I never knew that these teachers weren't coming." But now this guy is saying, "Listen, I've been telling you every day. I've been sending you a WhatsApp message saying the teacher is not coming. What are you doing?" How do you deal with that?
I really feel that it's not a black or white
The nation
situation.
wants to know.
The black or white situation. See, in any process of accountability, information is a factor. It may be an inadequate process. It may not be able to trigger the most effective responses. But one of the problems in the past was that the example that was given by Meenakshi ji, at least someone could reach an MP directly through the click of one key and inform her that there was something happening in her constituency which should not be happening. And at least she read it. Now, of course, there's no lightning rod that she reads it and action takes place. And in that sense, I think sometimes there is an overload. Sunil, please appreciate the fact that one of the big problems is how to sift through the kind of messages you get.
Yeah, we'll just come to that in my.
And you get hundreds of messages. Which one is legitimate and which is not? And let me also tell you, there's a great danger in a constituency with both urban and rural areas that your focus may be completely overtaken by those sections which are able to reach you. Let's say 2,500,000 gram panchayats are yet to be connected. The latest figures I could see, Sunil will know better, 43,200 villages are not covered by mobiles. And then you have a small town which is relatively more covered. You have a representative of the people, and there's asymmetry between what he needs to do in terms of pressures on him. So these are factors which will be sorted out. But I have no doubt in my mind, contrary to whatever Manish feels, I have no doubt in my mind that this digital India enhances accountability.
You wanted to react to that, Jay?
I just wanted to say that, we heard the phrase that government is not capable of dealing with this, doesn't have this. I agree with that. Two things I want to say about this. One is, with the large number of people being connected online, there are going to be a lot of bottom-up processes that are going to start happening. So it's the whole idea that, government should structure the engagement with citizens is going to get overtaken by a lot of bottom-up structures. Second thing is, yes, because government is not ready, something has to give. And that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Because what government has become is ossified, and something has to give. If thousands and hundreds of thousands of citizens get together and push back using digital infrastructure, some cracks are going to start developing, and that is what will bring about the re-engineering that we are talking about.
Yeah. I just want to pick up on a comment that, Pawan made. That, you talked about, you said that there's one room where 500 people sit and they start manufacturing campaigns, pro something or anti something. The point is that, when you have big organized campaigns of this sort taking place, one, how do MPs figure out what's going on? Because as Pawan said, there's a lot of, wrong stuff out there. There's sort of, just blatant lies being put out there. So when you don't have the mainline media to filter it out, how do you do? That's point number one. Point number two is that how do you actually create a campaign, again taking off from what Pawan said, how do you create a campaign for something which the Twitterati is not excited about? As he said, if there's so many villages which are not connected, you never get to know what their problems are. If you want to create a campaign to get the government to respond to the need for more irrigation, how do you do it? Because, maybe your farmers are not in it. And lastly, coming from this, maybe in the next round is, how many of you have actually run a campaign, as it were, So let's say, the NDMC is not responding to your votes, do you start getting people to say, okay, why don't we send tweets to the MDMC head, just to get him activated? It's like the same way people are propositioning you or are approaching you. Propositioning is not the right word. The same way that people are approaching you to get you to act, do you start getting your constituents to, put out those messages to other people to get them to act?
You look back at history and you'll find many disinformation campaigns in many different ways. Now, the argument that corporates or deep pockets can somehow capture the dialogue or capture the debate, whether net neutrality or anything else, is yes, there's a danger. They have deep pockets. They can organize these campaigns that look like most people are supporting non-net neutrality. But the answer to that is more sunlight. More sunlight.
Yeah, absolutely.
The best disinfectant, as they say, is sunlight. So the answer that transparency will get captured by deep pockets is you must have more transparency, more connectivity, and certain things that mainstream media doesn't cover can get exposed through lots of individual citizens, because the paradigm has changed. The paradigm is not just that you as an editor decide what we all read. Everybody here is an editor, everybody here is a correspondent. And they start posting, whether it is about whether somebody should get bail or whether some traffic accident took place or didn't take place or all kinds of things.
No,
right?
I'm just saying that how do you actually decipher the...
So I'm coming to that. I'm coming to that. So it is possible that initially a dialogue can get cornered by deep-pocketed vested interests. But I don't think that can sustain. Now, yes, you can maybe have an influence on policy making or regulations for a year or 2 years and divert it. But the more people that are connected, it is, you can't fool all the people all the time. You can fool all the people some of the time, and some of the people all the time, but not all the people all the time. So the more people that you have, the less sustainable strategies are there going to be for corporates or telcos or anybody to grab it.
Yeah, and my other question is that have you ever been able to,
Yes.
to run a campaign
Yes.
to get somebody to do work?
So I've been involved in 2 or 3 different such campaigns. Net neutrality is one because I've been involved with the subject for many years.
To get, let's say, like somebody wants something done in your village. It doesn't get done, but it's not actually your job. So
No,
then
of
do
course.
you put pressure on somebody through
All the time.
through a campaign?
Not only through a campaign, I use social media extensively, and I started doing it years ago, even though my constituents weren't very much on social media. I'll give you an example. Up until a year ago, I had some tens of thousands of people on my Facebook page, and mostly non-ODIAs. Today, I have several lakhs, and mostly ODIAs. Just in the space of 1 year, it has dramatically changed. And I use that as a campaign. So, for example, the meetings that I hold with district officials, which I'm entitled to as an MP, I'm entitled to chair certain meetings. I make them transparent. I engage people online, offline through it. And a lot of the things that we have to do is with moral authority and with political authority, not with executive authority. Obviously, we MPs don't have executive authority. We can't go and say, I sanction this bridge for 200 crores. It's not going to happen. But you can do a lot of things. For example, you go to a village, occasionally you will find certain poorer sections of the village still don't have electricity. The better off sections of the village have electricity. So naming and shaming and using the district review meetings as a forum. By the way, when I have a district review meeting, it's in a hall more or less this size. What I do is, we chair a meeting exactly like this. We are on a dais like this and the officers are there. But to engage people, we put loudspeakers outside the building, so that everything we are discussing, and this is an innovation that I brought about. So what happens, we may be 100 people inside the room, but usually there are 2,000 people outside the room listening to what dialogue is going on, why this road is not built and why that village is not fully electrified. That puts immense pressure on the administration, so that we don't have the executive authority, but we can bring to bear immense political and moral authority to the job.
Manish, do you have any points to make on this in terms of, as I said, to get back to what Pawan
Leslie
said?
Odwin.
That
Leslie
when you have a campaign which is coming up and it becoming big, you don't know to what extent that's true. Does that force you to sort of put your position in that way? Have you been able to counter it? How does a politician actually react to something like this?
Look, trolls are a reality of life. So therefore, if you're going to have a proliferation of the new media, you will have to live with the phenomena of trolls that some people will organize, some people will orchestrate. And there would be campaigns which would be carried out, some malicious, some positive. So, that's par for the course. You cannot sort of really pick and choose as to what part of the new media you like and what part of the new media you would like to discount. You know, life is about a package, and that's what the new media is. See, on this whole question of public representatives getting pressurized or sensitized to the views of their constituents on a particular issue, and that dictating their policy choices, is not something which is a sequitur in the Indian system. For the simple reason that you don't vote according to your conscience. You vote according to a whip which is issued by a party. And if you decide to violate the whip,
Then you're out.
you do it at your own peril. So therefore, you see, this whole paradigm is a completely alien paradigm to the Indian context, as long as the 10th schedule remains in place. In any case, what the 10th schedule has been able to do is that it has been able to emasculate any innovative policy making by the legislature across the board. Number two, let us even suppose that the 10th schedule did not exist and you were voting according to your constituency preferences or the pressure which was coming. Public pressure is not always right. You know, what a bulk of the people say does not essentially make it correct. In fact, there is an excellent book by John F. Kennedy called Profiles of Courage. It's worth reading. It is about legislators or parliamentarians who have voted against what was the popular sentiment in the country or in their particular area. So I think, the whole question is not black and white, or it is not binary. It is not as if because 100,000 people are telling you do this, you essentially have to do it. You have to exercise your discretion. You have to exercise your right to decide what is right and wrong. Sift. And insofar as identification of trolls is concerned, I guess over a period of time it will minus itself out, because, one
Your
set
troll,
of
my
trolls,
troll.
your troll, my troll will minus that out. So, these are all passing phenomena in the evolution of this virtual civilization.